women who are exhausted and frustrated and can't find answers and usually are constipated feel energized, happy, sexy, and not controlled by the bathroom anymore. And I bring this podcast to you today to talk about something that I used to experience very frequently. And once I started working on my gut, and once I started getting into a healthy lifestyle, once I started looking at my nutrition and my food and my environment, my PMS went away basically, which is shocking because I used to be rolling around on the floor in pain, wanting to die, more or less. It was excruciating. So today I have another functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner graduate with me, and her name is Sophie Shepard, and we are going to be talking about PMS. So let me give a little intro to Sophie. Sophie is the founder of She. She's also an FDNP who just 7 years ago was struggling to figure out why she felt so awful. At age 23, she had IBS and had gained 30 pounds. Her hair started to fall out. She was completely exhausted, and she was struggling with a lot of things that I'm sure many of you are struggling with as well. So this prompted her to go on her own holistic journey and to discover optimal health for herself. She went back to school. She went to the Institute for Integrated Nutrition, the CHEK Institute, and of course, functional diagnostic nutrition as well. Now, with years of personal experience in women's hormone health, Sophie helps women around the globe transform their health through nutrition, holistic lifestyle changes, and root cause testing so they can finally have straightforward answers to their most mystifying symptoms. Sophie's mission is to educate and empower women so they can reclaim their hormones and get their life back. So I'm so excited to have you, Sophie.
I'm so excited to have you as well. I mean, to be honest with you, it's so much fun to combine forces with hormones and gut health. As we know, it's so intimately connected. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, I can't agree more because I actually started my journey was primarily I knew that I had some hormone imbalances, and I had just started getting into the world of paleo and functional medicine, sort of like following all the gurus and listening to all the podcasts and all this kind of stuff. And so I knew enough when I had my crash that I was like, well, maybe I should test my hormones. And I didn't know at the time how connected it was to everything else. But I'm just so thankful for, things like this podcast like this, because that's really what helped me back in 2015 even go down this road and start this journey of figuring out what was going on with my body. And oh, by the way, these horrible, horrible PMS symptoms I was having didn't need to be a reality. And that was a really cool realization. So I hinted a little bit at your personal story in the intro. Can you share what was your story? What was your journey? How did you get into this yourself?
Yeah. You did such a great job in the introduction, but basically I had gut health issues. So I actually started the reverse. I had digestive issues since I was a kid, and they really came to a peak when I was 16, and I couldn't even drink water without doubling over in pain. And I got into the place, I'm sure a lot of the women listening can relate to this, where my symptoms were so constant and chronic that I just felt like, well, that's what's normal, and I actually thought that being doubled over in pain every day was what I was just going to do for the rest of my life. And it was at that point that I actually went to a gastroenterologist, and he diagnosed me with IBS, which is an okay diagnosis, except for that it doesn't really get to the root of what's happening or give you any solutions as to how to fix it. So I had a pretty hard time of it through high school and college. Definitely was the girl running off to the bathroom. I remember my dad driving me back to college, and we had to stop off at a Dunkin' Donuts because I couldn't make it, and that was the life that I was living. And flash forward, I would graduate from college, and I was in this relationship with a very emotionally abusive person. And that was just, so much stress. And I really lost who I was. I lost myself. And that stress combined with the gut health stuff really toppled my hormones. And I got Hashimoto's and other PMS, all the things, ovarian cysts, endometriosis scares, just so much things started kind of stumbling out of this amount of stress I was under. And when I went to the doctor, I was basically told to go on an antidepressant, take synthetic hormones for my thyroid, and to go on birth control or to stay on birth control. And it just didn't work for me. And so there I was, like 23, just so frustrated with what the options I'd been given, and was basically told there's nothing else they could do for me. I was literally told that by my doctor. So I said, well, I'm not going to live like this. And I actually found a functional medicine practitioner, so similar to you, just started kind of learning about it and decided I'm going to draw a line in the sand in my health here, and I'm going to really go after what I want. And I refuse to believe I'm going to feel like an 80-year-old woman when I'm 23. And that's when I did my healing journey, healed my gut, and then I started healing my hormones. So just been on this amazing journey ever since. And now I get to help other women who are dealing with the same stuff that I was dealing with.
Yeah. Okay. So there's so many things I want to pull out of that story really quickly. So I just want to stop for a second and really focus on the fact that if you are experiencing digestive symptoms or any symptoms similar to, I don't care, like if it's really minor PMS, if you're getting headaches regularly, if you're having a lot of fatigue, if you can't sleep at night, if you wake up constantly, if you have bloating, abdominal cramps, acid reflux, constipation, diarrhea, please do not ignore these things because they are not normal. And here's the reality that Sophie and I have to face in our own journeys. We didn't start taking care of it early enough because we didn't know. It took a long time for us to figure this stuff out. And so it makes it difficult. If you can start and say, oh my gosh, I've been experiencing constipation for 3 months and that's it. That's all you have. Awesome. One of us can help you and we can fix that. And then you don't have like 10 years of guessing and struggling, trying to figure out like what the heck is going on with you as things start to compound, because that's what happens. If you don't pay attention to what your body is telling you in the beginning because you think it's normal, or your mom has always struggled with this, or your friends think it's normal, or it's just something that happens to a lot of people, which I think, by the way, society sucks at telling people that like PMS is not normal. They advertise basically, just go buy Midol and go on birth control and whatever. And it's like, or you could look for the underlying nutrient imbalances that are going on, or whatever it is. And we're going to talk about that. But I think the biggest thing that if I could like shout from the rooftops, which I'm trying to do right now, is like something is going on where you do not feel good, like 98% of the time, please do not ignore it. Because if you don't address it, it's not going to get better. It's going to get worse. And there is no real like stagnant place. Like if you're dealing with something and you don't take care of it, it will get worse. And probably most likely it's going to add on, it's going to pull as it rolls down the hill. It's going to grab all the other crap along with it. And then you're going to be tired and you're going to have PMS and you're going to get migraines and you're going to have bloating and you're going to have constipation. Then you're going to get diagnosed with something and then you're going to be on all these prescriptions. So don't wait until it's too late. And just to encourage everybody else that maybe is listening to this that is 10 years into it, there's still hope.
I love your rant. That was amazing. And I feel like you and I just are on the same brain about this. It's like, yeah, I wish someone was there for me to tell me, stop, you shouldn't be feeling constipated and diarrhea and bloating, and acid reflux and all these things. That's a sign from your body. It's screaming at you to do something. And unfortunately it didn't happen for me. And I got this diagnosis, and my diagnosis is autoimmunity. So you can't undo autoimmune. You're autoimmune. All you can do then is manage it. And of course I am, and I feel great. But I would say even if you aren't at a place where it's affecting you 95%, if it's affecting you at all, it's a sign from your body that there is something imbalanced or up, and you have every right to seek optimal health. It's not even that you should seek like just okay health. You should feel amazing, right? You deserve that. And I agree so much about the PMS thing. It's just normal. Every woman goes through that. I was talking to somebody about a collaboration. She's like, so PMS must be really bad for people to come see you then, huh? And I said, why does it have to be so bad? Why can't it just be something that's really frustrating? Like, basically she was saying that it would have to be so severe that someone would come and work on it, because we just assume that it's normal, and it's not. So
yeah, I mean, it's probably accurate to say that people don't always want to address it until it's extreme. Yes. But that's maybe not necessarily the best thing, because you really, and I think this is a difficult message to get across sometimes, that you really, really do want to be proactive. So it's not stupid to spend time and money and effort and invest in yourself if something is a small problem at this point, because what you're doing is you're investing now so that you can save later, so it's not that huge problem.
Oh my
Because
gosh, yes.
the road it gets, it does turn into autoimmunity, or it does turn into something that's a severe problem where needs surgery or whatever. And sometimes those things are absolutely helpful and necessary. I don't want to diminish that. You had mentioned antidepressants and birth control as well, and there is always a time and place for these things, but there's also
Absolutely.
a lot of situations where it's only suppressing the underlying issue. It's not actually solving it. So, for example, with birth control, a lot of times that's prescribed when for some sort of physical problem people are experiencing. When they go off of it, it comes back, but it usually comes back worse.
Yeah.
So, we got to be careful about that. And so, I want to just encourage people. It's so important to value yourself. And there's so many times we would, value our dogs or value our children or value other people and not take the time or energy on ourselves, but it's important. So I'm going to stop talking now. I'm going to ask you questions. I think probably everybody knows this, but let's just start with the basics. What is PMS?
Yes. Okay. Well, actually, I think it's good to kind of define it, but it's basically a grouping of emotional and physical symptoms that occur around 10 days prior to your period. But of course, everyone's a little bit different on the time frame, and then they disappear during or shortly after when you start bleeding. So these can really range from irritability and anxiety and depression and weepiness. So the kind of emotional component of it, which I think most people associate with PMS, but there's also a whole other physical side of it, right? So if you've ever experienced like sleep disturbances and fluid retention or abdominal bloating, is really common, and also heart palpitations or joint pain. Some women have really bad premenstrual headaches or migraines, and brain fog is another really big one. And then, of course, I think most women can relate to the food cravings, and even swelling of the breasts and painful breasts, and of course acne. So there's a lot of different symptoms of how this PMS can show up in the body, for sure.
And really, they are coming from some sort of imbalance between estrogen and progesterone, usually, right? So whether they're not in the same ratio, or one's a little too high or one's a little too low, that's kind of what's stimulating all of this.
Yeah, yes and no. Most often, yes, there is an imbalance in the phase where we should be higher in progesterone than we are in estrogen. You're definitely right by that. And oftentimes, people who are experiencing extreme PMS have a sharp decline in progesterone. So it's kind of like, oh my gosh, all of a sudden I don't have this hormone and I'm reacting this way. But another thing,
I mean, you can legit feel crazy if you don't have enough progesterone. You can
yes,
feel like
yeah,
the deep end if you don't have enough of that sucker.
totally. And we call progesterone that keep calm and carry on hormone for a reason. It really helps to relax the nervous system. It helps to create GABA, and that really supports the brain and our way of relaxing, and also in. So, when you see sleep disturbances, for example, you always want to ask, am I ovulating and am I creating enough progesterone? Because that could be part of it. And the other thing, you mentioned earlier is right on to it. Nutritional deficiencies I see really often, like magnesium, calcium, vitamin D, and B vitamins being really low, can also really contribute to that PMS.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And I have so much of this just from personal experience. When I literally went crazy, it was like a light switch was flipped in my life, where all of a sudden I was crying all day, every day. It was like a 2-week chronic panic attack is what it felt like. Yeah, it was like unbelievably scary, and I didn't know what was happening in my body. Turns out my hormones sucked. But as it kind of went on, I had so many gut problems that I ultimately addressed. I had, oh my gosh, I'm convinced I had so many nutrient deficiencies. And it's interesting, as I've really, not everybody gets this deep with it, but just because I'm so fascinated in it, if there's an opportunity for me to try a test, I'll do it, basically.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I've like really got into the biohacking side of it, where I'm like, what are my genetic dispositions, and what are this, and let's test this, and I'm just like chronically I chronically struggle with like B12 and my B vitamins and things like that. I take so many B vitamins, it's unbelievable. And I was just on a call with my naturopath because, by the way, every coach needs a coach, every teacher needs a teacher, right? And a lot of times you don't want to be working on yourself.
That's
and
right.
I was just on a call with my naturopath, talking about my hormones, and we're trying to figure out like why my body basically hates producing cortisol. It's just a fascinating thing. There's so many things, and what's weird, I'm a special little flower. I have plenty of energy, but I have like zero cortisol. So it's just. Wow. Yeah, it's a bizarre. So we're like, we're gonna have to figure this out maybe to see what's going on. This probably can't be good long term.
Yeah.
So you mentioned a couple things, but what are some other, go into like really what causes PMS, maybe what contributes, I guess I should say, because sometimes it's not just one thing.
Yeah.
Contributes to sort of this spiral that turns into these horrible periods.
Yeah, well, actually, let's go back into one thing you just said, which is genetics. So you can be genetically predisposed to having PMS or just issues around your period. That doesn't mean that your genetic pathways are going to be turned on. That is actually largely influenced by your environment. So that's the study of epigenetics, which shows us that about 90% of our genetic expression is performed essentially by what we put in our body, what we're breathing, the water we're drinking, the stress we're under, the people that are in our life, right? And so it is true that these genetic SNPs can come into play. And so actually, funny enough, this week I was just doing someone's Dutch hormone test, which is the test that Kylene and I love for hormones. And I was seeing that, she was creating great amounts of progesterone. And so it really wasn't an estrogen progesterone issue in terms of ratio. The issue was she obviously has some sort of SNP with her COMT gene, and she's not methylating her estrogen out. So what that means for anybody who is like, what is she talking about? It's like she's creating the hormone, she's ovulating, she's fine with all of that. But then when it comes to pulling the estrogen out of the body, her body's just not detoxing it. And when that happens, it can get recirculated. And when it gets recirculated, it can still cause all the issues of estrogen dominance. So even though on paper she's not estrogen dominant, because she's not detoxing it, she's experiencing all those symptoms.
And let's talk about some things that impact that. Because first of all, I can't stress enough that if you eat a crappy diet, you're probably going to have some problems in this area.
Yes.
Because our body needs, oh my gosh, so it's unbelievable how many nutrients our body needs for these functions. But what's so cool is when you eat a wide variety of foods and different colors and all this, you probably get them. Although it's getting harder and harder and harder and harder because our soil's depleted and, all these different issues that we're experiencing with food. And, we want to live life a little. Not every single thing is going to be, this super packed nutrient dense meal, right? But if you're not at least prioritizing it, you're setting yourself up for failure in this area. Especially with like detoxification. I talk to my clients because I focus on the gut health side of it. I talk to my clients constantly about pooping. If you haven't pooped by like 6 p.m., you better be taking some Seneca or eating some dried prunes that night because you need to it can't go on for more than 24 hours. This is a problem, know? So talk about, you mentioned methylation. That is definitely something that people can address, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think this is where it goes into, you do need to, there's certain things, and we'll talk about like what people can do lifestyle and dietary wise that may completely change the game for you with PMS. And then if it doesn't, or if you've been kind of at this for a long time and you're not seeing that shift, that's always when I always say, get the Dutch test, have one of us run it for you. We'll see what's happening. Because if it's a gene issue, a methylation issue, that's a very specific nutrient plan and a very specific supplement plan that you need to kind of address. And you wouldn't want to just go on that willy-nilly without knowing it. But prior to kind of just doing testing, there are definitely some things we can do. So, like Kylene said, you want to make sure you're getting enough nutrients. So that means tasting the rainbow, eating as many fruits and vegetables.
I thought you were going to say tasting the whipped cream there. the way that whipped cream. Right. I can get down with that. Yeah.
Yeah. So eating the rainbow, tasting the rainbow, whatever. It's Friday. We'll get funky. But yeah, so having a nutrient dense diet is definitely important. You always want to make sure, like Kylene said, the soils have been really depleted, so you might need to supplement with a multivitamin or a multi-mineral.
I would also
Um,
argue if you're experiencing these things, that's probably a necessity.
I would agree.
Yeah.
I would definitely agree. And that's just unfortunately the state of the world that we're living in. And it's nothing wrong necessarily with you if you are eating, a balanced diet. But there's other things as well. So in addition to balanced diet, we also need to look at inflammation, and foods that cause inflammation are high sugar, lots of wheat, so gluten, cow's dairy, and those things can really, if your issue is a progesterone issue, those things cause a lot of inflammation, and they can stop us from having a healthy ovulation. They can stop us from creating enough progesterone, and they can also cause issues with pregnenolone, which would then cause issues with our brain. So in terms of how we're adapting to stress. So that anxiety and that anxiousness that people are feeling. So we really want to look at kind of how we can lower inflammation as well. So not just eating a balanced diet, but also pulling out the things that are causing massive amounts of inflammation.
Ooh, can I throw in a fun fact here?
Yeah.
So in our gut, we have all these good and bad bacteria, right? Or I guess beneficial and opportunistic bacteria that balance each other out. And there's actually this whole grouping of bacteria called your estrobolome that have to do with estrogen metabolites. And we know, you mentioned wheat causing inflammation. We know that wheat is a highly glyphosate sprayed product. And if you're consuming it, you're probably consuming glyphosate. And glyphosate has been shown in very, very, very small amounts to disrupt and kill beneficial gut flora. So it's definitely something that we want to avoid when we're focusing on hormones and inflammation. And really, if you just want to optimize your health in general, it's something that's the one I talk about nutrition and personalizing everything with my clients. That's like the one thing I'm like super hard on.
Yeah, I think that's really important. Eating organic is so crucial. It's so crucial. Where our body is already doing so much to detox, to support us, the last thing we need is to be adding things like glyphosate back on top of it. So I know it's kind of hard right now with the current state of the country to go grocery shopping, but as much as you can, when you go grocery shopping, try to buy organic. And if you are on a budget, you can always look up the EWG Clean 15 and the Dirty Dozen so that you can really follow the things that are the most contaminated with glyphosate. This is just such a toxic product that unfortunately everyone's exposed to it. Like everyone, if you test for it, you will have glyphosate in your system, and it's just everywhere. Unfortunately, like in California, the water that they wash the organic vegetables in and they use for the irrigation, it has glyphosate runoff. So the more that we can support the body in this is really crucial, and oftentimes doing a detox can be helpful as well.
Can you talk about what are the most common symptoms that are maybe unusual for people to recognize if they have PMS?
Yeah, I would say I think most people think of PMS and they think like I'm going to fly off the handle emotionally. But the sleep disturbances is the one that I see so much in my practice that people probably don't associate with PMS, but it could really be a hormonal imbalance, because we know that progesterone promotes sleep, and progesterone should be the kind of dominant hormone in the second half of the cycle. So if it's not, or estrogen is dominant over progesterone, you could be having trouble sleeping, and that's a big, big one. So another reason to look into your hormones and potentially not be so hard on yourself about why you can't sleep. It might be because of a bigger hormonal issue. I'm just going to turn my phone on airplane mode. I'm getting like every CNN alert possible.
So can you talk a little bit about maybe estrogen dominance? Because that's probably, I would think, one of the most common imbalances ratios that we're going to see. Can you talk maybe a little bit about why that's an issue for people? I mean, you just mentioned sleep for sure.
Yeah, estrogen dominance is really, really common. What happens in our 28-day cycle, or our approximate 28-day cycle, is that estrogen is this beautiful hormone that we get for the first 2 weeks. It's kind of growing from the first day of our cycle, which is day one, is when you are bleeding. So not spotting, but actually bleeding. And then you get to day 14-ish, and that's when you ovulate. And that's when estrogen is actually at its highest. And estrogen is a great hormone. Like, there's so many things that estrogen does for us. The problem becomes when we can't get it out of our body, or we continue to make too much of it, or we don't make enough progesterone. And that's where we start seeing these issues like painful periods, heavy periods. Those are probably the two biggest ones I see with estrogen dominance that are really affecting and derailing women's lives. But breast pain, like extreme breast pain before your period, that's another really big one that I see. Fibroids, ovarian cysts. I had an ovarian cyst burst on me, and I spent the night in the hospital. It was horrible.
Literally,
so those are
in the world. You felt it's like you've been shot. It hurts so bad.
It hurts so bad. And I don't know about you, but mine, I didn't know what was happening. And it was just like this chronic pain that started. And I thought it was like related to my gut, because there was blood all in my abdomen, and blood is very irritating. So it was, my whole stomach hurt so badly. And I thought, oh, my IBS or my SIBO is back, but anyway, sidebar. But yeah, all these things can happen because of estrogen dominance. So we really want to focus on identifying if it's estrogen dominance, and then again, is it too much estrogen? Is it not enough progesterone? Or is it a detoxification issue? And that's where the testing comes in handy to know what your specific situation is.
Okay. So what can we do? What lifestyle things? What food plays a role? What's sort of your general approach in terms of things? We should just pause and be like, if you have these issues, you should get tested, right? But at home, while people are sort of working through some things, what makes an impact?
Yeah, I would say one of the number one things that people can do is, in addition to the anti-inflammatory diet. So really the big, if it feels too intimidating to do a whole elimination diet on your own, the three foods that are known inflammatory are sugar, wheat, and cow's dairy. If you take those three out for a couple of cycles and you see a difference, it could just be that. I've had people just message me saying, oh my gosh, I just took out dairy and my period is so much better.
Yeah.
So that alone can really help.
When you're talking about hormones, you may see other results more quickly, but with hormones, because it is a monthly cycle, you do want to do these things for several months at a time to see if they're making an impact. Because a lot of times, some of the symptoms that you're experiencing are actually from lifestyle habits that you had 3 months prior. So you definitely want to make sure that you're committed to any of these changes for a significant period of time to really understand if it's impacting your period specifically, right?
Yeah, that's right. So your follicle lifespan is 100 days. So, 90 days is 3 months. So that means that the period you're having now could be a reaction to lifestyle factors 3 months prior. That's what we really want to nourish those follicles from the full time that they're kind of processing in our body. So so commitment is definitely key. It's not one of those, just remove this for a couple of days and see how your period is next month.
Yeah,
That's not, or like, I'm just going to remove it right before my period. No.
Tell me if you agree with this kind of approach. I will say with coffee, I think you can cycle coffee. So like if you decide to drink it maybe the first 2 weeks, but realize that once you start getting towards ovulation, maybe it's a little too much stress on your liver, you start noticing it, you start tapering down, maybe you don't have it the week prior to your period. Like some people might have success with that specifically, but when it comes to like foods, I think the longer term, is that kind of how you would think about that?
Yeah, everyone's a little different too. And like, if you're having issues again with that comp gene, you're going to have issues methylating out your caffeine. So everyone's different in their genetics and how it responds. But yes, generally, I would say women can get away with like kind of less sleep, lighter food, coffee the first 2 weeks of their cycle. And then as they're getting kind of closer to that PMS area and that bleeding phase, they're probably going to want to cool down on that. So that's definitely helpful. And I would say, the other things to think about is more lifestyle. So how can we reduce stress and how can we support exercise? Because both of those things are going to support estrogen balance. And when we reduce stress, it allows progesterone to do its job. If we are constantly under stress, mental, emotional stress, or those hidden stressors that we learn so much about in school, and that's where, gut health comes in handy. If our body has this huge stress bucket, it's not going to be able to create enough progesterone. It could inhibit your ability to even ovulate if it's chronic enough, because the body's smart, right? So ovulation is a sign of health, it's a sign of vitality, and it's a sign that everything is safe and I can produce a child, right? We forget that our menstrual cycle is not this painful thing we have to go through for 5 days a month, but it's actually this whole process that's happening in our body to allow us to produce a child. So when you think about it,
and your
body's deal.
So smart. It's like, hey, if something more important is going on, or if I don't have what I need, I'm not gonna, this isn't the time for you to get pregnant. Right. So it goes right on the back burner.
Yeah. So it'll either suppress the progesterone or you won't ovulate at all. I mean, that's why people could be having missing periods or other weird period related things. So, so I think I know no one wants to talk about stress because for some reason human beings don't like to address it. But the more little hacks that you can do around stress management, like meditation, deep breathing, the 7-11 breath where you breathe in for 7, you let it go for 11, really essential oils, walks, singing, dancing, anything that feels good in your body to lower stress on a daily basis is going to help big time.
Let's hit another pain point for women. What about alcohol?
Yes. That was kind of the next thing on my list. Yes. So I know. And, it's so hard because especially right now, I think everyone's probably leaning into the alcohol more than they would normally because they're at home and everything's, topsy-turvy. But alcohol, a couple of things. There's so many things with alcohol. I mean, it's just toxic, right? So, I mean, number one, as you know, as I'm sure you talk about all the time, it completely can cause dysbiosis in the gut, which when you have dysbiosis in the gut, it can cause that when that estrogen goes back into the gut, it can get recirculated. So that's a problem. It taxes the liver, which then taxes the gut, which taxes the hormones, kind of taxes the whole body. And we know that one alcoholic drink actually raises estrogen. I can't remember if it's 10% or 20%, but it's a significant amount. Yes. So if you're already dealing with estrogen dominance and then you're like drinking a lot, it's just like pa-ping, and estrogen is building and building and building. So there's just so much with alcohol that is not favorable for our hormones.
Yeah. And I would say that doesn't mean, you can't ever, enjoy it, but really, basically you have to come to understand your body so that, first of all, you're making a conscientious choice, not something that you just don't know, right? And then also, if you're making that choice, like work with someone so well, how can I mitigate the negative effects of this? Because there's definitely ways to do that. So we're not trying to ruin your life. I just want to throw that out there. We just want to make you feel
Yes, absolutely. And you have to be human and you have to realize what's good for you, in any moment. So I think that's the basis of my work with She is just empowering women to have the information so that they can then make the choice. And if they make the choice to have the glass of wine, then enjoy that freaking glass of wine and don't look back, right? Like that's kind of how I look at it. So
yeah. So how do you feel about answering some audience questions?
Yeah, sure.
You want to do that? Okay.
Yeah.
How can you tell the difference between normal PMS and PMDD? I'm tracking my cycles, but I'm concerned that my PMS is far from normal. So we have things like PMS, PMDD, we have IBS, we have IBDD. It's basically like a diagnostic tool to tell you how extreme it is, right? So how do you know basically what are some differentials between the two, PMS and PMDD?
Yeah, I saw that comment and I think, the responses were exactly right. PMDD, which is premenstrual dysphoric disorder, is really a condition that affects about 1 in 20 women. And it's when you have such severe premenstrual depression and irritability and anxiety that you're kind of disabled, right? Like you could, someone wrote this and I love this. It's like you could end a relationship or get fired from your job because your hormones are so extreme that you're really having that extreme swing. It could also, perhaps be about the amount of pain that you're in as well. I think that's
about cramping would typically be rougher, I would feel like, with that.
Yeah, it'd be really painful. I had a client who had really severe PMDD, and she had to take an Advil, or when she first started coming to me, she had to take an Advil or a Midol within 10 minutes of getting her first cramp on her first day, or she was done. She had to go home.
Yeah. So PMS can be even just more mild, where it's like, oh, it's here. Maybe I'm slightly moody. Maybe I have to take a couple Advil, like, because I feel it coming on, and I'm good the rest of the day. But I can like go to work. I can function. PMDD is like I'm lying on the floor. I'm
unable to move.
I'm probably going to the doctor to get prescription pain medication. I'm doing these sorts of things. Yeah, and it's just
it's
in your body.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And again, though, I think what's interesting, you said there's IBS, there's IBD. Yeah, I mean, it's just the extreme version. So it's something that potentially has been going on for a really long time, or you've been genetically, exposed to having this happen. And it also doesn't mean that you have to live like that. I mean, that's just more of a reason to understand exactly what's happening with your hormones, get the testing done, and accommodate your lifestyle and diet to fit that, what's going on with you. And I've seen people reverse that in a few months, so it's definitely possible.
Really quickly, because there was a follow-up question. Someone that has PMDD asked specifically, she can't take hormone altering birth control because it caused her to be prone to cysts. So we just talked about how painful those are, at leading to surgery. So she said, is there anything then, she can't do that with her PMDD? What can she do? So we just talked about that a little bit, but I don't know if you want to touch on it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, sure. I'm happy to. And I was in the same boat. I actually was on hormonal birth control when I got Hashimoto's thyroiditis. And then I decided to come off of it because hormonal birth control can suppress the thyroid and screw up the gut. And so then I was kind of like, well, what do I do? Because no one ever teaches you, well, what do I do now that I'm not on this birth control? And because we use birth control to mask these symptoms, so often it can be, it can be a little bit challenging to know what to do. So a few things, all of the diet and lifestyle things that we talked about earlier. There's also some supplementation that I would consider. Magnesium, B6 are both really good. And maybe even the Vitex tree, chasteberry can really help, because that will help to reestablish the connection between your brain and your ovaries. And that takes about 3 months. So that's definitely something you can't just take once and feel the difference. But if you are nutrient deficient in those kind of key areas like vitamin D, magnesium, B6, maybe B12, you could be experiencing these things, and diet alone might not be able to turn the tide for you. Mm-hmm. So I would say that. And then I would also, this is also where I would check in with the gut, the healthy gut flora, because if we don't have healthy gut flora, we could be metabolizing estrogen again. But there are so many, it depends on where you are. So that's again where I would say, have Kylene or I do a Dutch test for you and see exactly what's true for you, or try these lifestyle changes, reducing stress, exercising, reducing the inflammatory load on your body. Maybe you're taking a probiotic or some other things that Kylene shares about how to support your gut health during this time. And if that's not working, then come back and be like, okay, I need an advanced approach here because this isn't working. But let me just be really clear to this woman that asked this. You do not need hormonal birth control to fix this hormonal imbalance. Your hormones are just expressing themselves in a different way right now, and they need some guidance back into being regular. That's all that it is. There is nothing wrong with you. There's nothing defunct with you. No. That's not the rabbit hole we get to go down, right? So let's peel it back. Just know that your body's expressing itself. It needs some help, and it's just showing that to you in these symptoms.
Symptoms are always signals, and I love that approach, because it's basically the same that I encourage people with too. Is always start at home in terms of what you have control over. You have control over nutrition, right? And you have control over these different aspects of, let me try to eliminate these inflammatory foods. You could have a severe food sensitivity that's causing tremendous inflammation in your body, and you have tremendous inflammation, you're going to have a horrible period.
Totally.
Um,
Dr. Laura Briden wrote in her book about how she had a client who had just such extreme food sensitivity and celiac to wheat, that that was the one thing that made the difference, and she had a normal period. So sometimes it's as easy as that, and sometimes, as Kylene said, you could have, I mean, I ran my food sensitivity test and I had 22 food sensitivities, incling to kale.
right.
So, it's like
berries, avocados, things you would never, exactly.
Yeah. So you could do like an elimination type diet and then that type of thing. And if it doesn't work, then there's some other things going on. But there's a lot you can do at home and you have so much control over.
Yeah, and I always would just say with people, start with what you have control over, but be really committed to it. Really value your health enough that it's valued over convenience or habit, because these changes are very difficult. And I get that. I was obsessed with bread. I was addicted to it. I was the person that would go, could eat the entire thing of bread sticks at the Italian restaurant. I'm not kidding. Like, people know. I used to have a blog called Double Stuff's Not Enough because I was obsessed with Oreos. Okay, so if I can do it, you can do it. It's possible.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I used to love wheat. I used to love it so much. You
love more, Sophie? How you feel?
Feeling good.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's like a non-negotiable now. When I've gotten exposed to gluten like twice this year, and I was down for the count. I mean, It was horrible. So
yeah, 100%. Yeah, I love what you're sharing. Okay, we have a couple more questions, I think. All right, what would cause more frequent periods, like every 2 weeks, like having their period every 2 weeks? Is this something that is urgent, or can I wait until the pandemic stuff is over? Let's start with that question, and then we can move on to the next. She had kind of a two-part.
Okay. All right, cool. So more frequent periods could be a lot of things. It could indicate that you're having a short follicular phase, which is the first kind of half from when you start bleeding to when you ovulate. Or you could be having a short luteal phase, which is when it's from the part of ovulation up until when you start bleeding. And then also an anovulatory cycle, which means that you didn't ovulate at all. So those are some things that could happen. It indicates that, but those things can be caused by stress. So I know a lot of people are under massive amounts of stress right now. So I don't know if this is, just started because of around the pandemic, but if it is, I know a lot of women have been reaching out with really weird period things this month. So know that stress is a big factor.
The other thing we had, it was like, there was like 3 things that happened the same week. We got quarantined. It was Friday the 13th. And something else that same week. It was a full moon. I think it was a full moon.
Full moon, yeah.
All in the same week.
Yeah. No bueno. No bueno. Yeah. So we have to just take that time to really rest and be aware of how much the stress is potentially building up, especially if we have these other hidden stressors in our body. And I would say the other really big thing I see with irregular kind of shortened periods is either under eating or not enough calories for how much energy you're exerting. So if you're like training for a marathon or you're working out really intensely, but you're not able to fuel yourself efficiently, that's again a scarcity for your body. It feels like it's not safe. So it can skip ovulation or like kind of ovulate too quickly and kind of go a little crazy. There are some other things that are maybe more, clinical and deserve a doctor's look at. And that would be things like endometriosis and PCOS or thyroid disease. And there's also like elevated prolactin, obesity, or premature ovarian insufficiency. So as you can see, there's actually quite a lot that could be kind of causing these issues. So
I would say, if it's something new, maybe call your doctor and kind of let them know, like, hey, this is what's going on. Like, should I get checked now or can I wait? But then for sure, I would have an appointment with your gynecologist just to like rule out the scary stuff, because anytime things that are going on that are really, really crazy, you want to make sure that, it's not something bigger going on. If you rule out the scary stuff, or maybe even before you get to the appointment, start incorporating all that lifestyle stuff. Start incorporating, eating healthy, higher amounts of healthy fats, for example, are super super critical for your hormones, and eliminate all the things that we already talked about, and then look at your stress. But yeah, I think that for that situation, it's probably a combination of rule out the scary stuff and then do what you can beyond that.
I think anytime someone says, you should probably speak to a doctor, or you're worried about seeing a doctor, it's not that you can't do the nutritional stuff, right? You can still do all the lifestyle things, the nutrition things, and go check it out with your doctor, rule that out. Or if that's what it is, like planning to
get the peace of mind,
Right. Exactly. I mean, how often do we think like stress about what could be wrong with our bodies? I mean, if we can get some peace around that, that's going to be a huge load off your body. So I would definitely agree with Kylene on that, and check it out. Make sure it's not something kind of scarier or bigger. It could just be related to stress or just not quite enough nutrients. And those are things that you can fix and are in your control. And if it was PCOS or endo or a thyroid disorder, those are still, like Kylene said at the beginning, these are things that there's still hope. There's still things you can do. There's a lot we can do with those things. So it's not a death sentence by any means, although I've definitely, when I was diagnosed with thyroid things, it definitely felt like a death sentence. So if anyone's dealing with those types of things, just know that it's not. There's so much we can do.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
The second part of the question, can higher hormone levels or periods trigger depression, and is there a way to regulate that? I've noticed all of major depressive episodes come right before my period. Is that coincidence? Ooh, I'm thinking detox.
Yeah, so it's not a coincidence, and that is one of those symptoms of PMS, right? So that is a classic when we're potentially not creating enough progesterone or that we have a lot of inflammation, because we need progesterone to support. If we have high inflammation, we have lower progesterone, we have lower GABA and more estrogen. And when that combination of things happens, that is a storm ready for anxiety, for depression, for any mood-related disorder. So if it feels cyclical like that, I would definitely say follow the stuff that we just outlined, and that could be really, really helpful. And, I would also say that this is where you want to make sure Kylene mentioned eating healthy fats. So dietary fat is the basis of how we create all hormones. And a lot of women are afraid of eating dietary fat because they think it'll make them fat, but fat doesn't make you fat if it's healthy. It's the sugar that does that, and it creates so much inflammation. And so what we want to do is eat things like avocados, nuts and seeds, extra virgin olive oil. These are all healthy fats. If you eat fish, that's a great one to have. That's also a brain booster, so a mood booster for sure, wild caught salmon, that kind of thing. So if you're not already doing that, you could really try incorporating that. And the other thing I would say is making sure you're getting really good quality and enough protein. Generally we want to be having like 20 to 30 grams of protein per meal. And a lot of women are not doing that because they think that it's going to turn them into like some muscular guy. And that's just not the case. We just need to fuel efficiently and purposefully. And so if you eat animal protein, you want to make sure you're getting organic and grass-fed and pasture-raised and really good quality, meats and eggs and things like that. And if you're eating more of a vegan or a vegetarian diet, and you're having these issues, that's a whole other conversation, because that I see all the time, actually, because oftentimes when we're eating plant-based diet, we're actually not getting enough of the nutrients, or we're not converting them enough, or we don't have the gut capabilities to create those nutrients. So if you're having, period issues and you're vegan or vegetarian, that's where you want to look at like supplementing with an omega-3 and B vitamins and things like that, just to round out what you're already eating.
Can I throw out an unpopular opinion right now?
Mm-hmm.
I kind of hate the term plant-based. Every diet is freaking plant-based. But
yes.
That doesn't mean that you demonize meat. You need
know.
But the problem is not meat, guys. The problem is not protein. The problem is CAFO farming. And the problem is glyphosate. And the problem is that these animals are being treated poorly. And the problem is that they're being fed foods that they're not supposed to be eating. And neither should you, like crappy grains that are sprayed with glyphosate. And what they eat, you eat. So of course, when people go off these crappy grains-fed cows, they feel better.
Yep. Yeah.
But that doesn't mean eliminate. So if you have to switch over to grass-fed, that's fine. Maybe you do eat less meat because it's slightly more expensive. Maybe like you make, a few less dinners with meat to prioritize that. But every paleo should be plant-based.
Keto should be plant-based too.
Plant-based. Oh my gosh,
we need plants.
Stop with the whole term because it should be everywhere. I mean, everyone should be eating plants. Okay.
Yes, I love that. I love that so much. It's like no matter where.
It's not unless you're on the carnivore diet. But if you're eating meat, it's not the majority of your plate. It shouldn't be the majority of your plate.
No, definitely not. Although down here in Florida, it's been harder for me to mitigate the size portions that are happening with 4 people.
All the memes and videos are going around. Like, can we all just agree that like calories don't count during the quarantine? Because if we all agree, then none of us will have summer bodies and we'll all be equal.
I love that so much. But I couldn't agree more with you. And I mean, you got to listen to your body and what works best for you. That's the bottom line. But also the bottom line is eat some damn plants. Like we need fiber. We need to eat nutrient dense fiber. That's like a non-negotiable.
Yeah. Well, and listening to your body is always, it always trumps everything else. So I have had clients that are just like, I just feel better on less meat. They don't eliminate it, but they just feel better on less of it. And I'm like, good, then
great.
Prioritize that. That's totally fine. If you feel better eating more, like for example, Mediterranean, where it's just a little bit of meat, maybe mostly fish, pescatarian, Mediterranean, that sort of thing. Awesome. Because here's the thing. Genetically, we all come from different places. In America, we're in this melting pot, but genetically, we all come from these different heritages. And like, I just think it's so cool how like God designed our bodies to like function optimally in that environment that we lived in. And so someone that lives in Italy and is super used to eating that food is not going to like switch over to like an Eskimo diet that's all protein and fat. Like they will feel horrible. And vice versa. If like an Eskimo goes over and tries to eat a Mediterranean diet, they will never be full ever.
That's right.
You're just not going to feel good. And so everybody is genetically different, which is why I kind of hate these whole fad diets. Like, oh, is this going to work for everybody? It's not, because we're not all the same. So don't demonize it. Always prioritize the highest quality, get the highest quality, and then listen to your body. But we're kind of getting off topic. I'm sorry.
It's okay. 100%. It's the basis though, right? I mean, that's the thing. We are like trying to classify a disease or diagnosis, right? Or a symptom. The baseline of it is going back to diet, rest, exercise, stress, supplementation. Like that's what we learn in school because for good reason, right? That's what actually creates successful results. And a healthy diet, no matter what that means for you, should include some plants.
And some protein.
And some protein. And some fat.
Yep. Right. We have one more question. Do you have time?
Yeah, go for it.
All right. Is it normal to have a couple days a month with no, and that's capitalized, no energy? Like just want to sleep all the time. I bleed very minimally, but my PMS is horrid. That's like a bunch of things right there.
It's a lot. Yeah.
No, that's not normal. And then I'm going to explain why.
Yeah. I don't want you to. So whoever's question that is, if you're listening to this and, it's hard to say normal, I think, because that's like a whole other thing that women get in their head. It's not optimal, right? There should never be a time where you feel like you're completely depleted. While you're bleeding, your body is letting go of a ton of nutrients. So if it's during that time, know that taking a nap is a completely okay thing to do, right? That is fine. And I know as women, usually type A women, we don't want to hear that, but you can actually slow down, and you should slow down when you're on your period, because your body is getting rid of so much, right? It's working very, very hard. So if it's during that time, take a nap, first of all. If it's not during that time, or if you feel like it's excessive, I would say that that's when you want to look into what's up with your hormones. Most commonly, I see people not fueling properly throughout the month. So in the first half of your cycle, you are going to potentially feel lighter. As you get closer to estrogen, it's kind of like the spring and summertime. So you could eat more like pressed salads and, kimchi and sauerkraut and kind of lighter apples and things like that. But then as you get closer to your period, you're going to want to maybe switch up your fuel source, because otherwise you're going to get super hangry and lose a lot of energy. And so you're going to want to potentially try stews and soups and kind of really dense, nutrient dense things. And that's going to feel good. Like complex carbohydrates from, sweet potatoes, for example, could be a really nice thing during that second half. It's really grounding, right? And at the same time, you might want to lessen your exercise too, more yoga, long walks. So you want to really listen into your body around that, if that makes sense.
I have to
go ahead.
The charger for my laptop. I'll be right back. So
okay.
Can you please continue to talk about the importance of nutrient density? And then and here's where we have to give a slight disclaimer. Give your little disclaimer about recommending supplements, and then recommend some supplements.
Yes.
Yeah. Multivitamins, things for PMS, that sort of thing.
Yeah. So it is really important to be nutrient dense, but it's also really important as a woman to realize that your cycle dictates your nutrient intake. So, you have to start to realize that we cycle throughout a 28-day-ish cycle. Men have the same hormones on repeat every day. It's like Groundhog's Day, okay? So we have to fuel those parts of our body with exactly what Kylene and I were talking about. So that's going to be those healthy fats, those proteins, and that fiber. And if you're still feeling exhausted after that, there's a lot of reasons why you could be feeling tired. And that is when you always want to go back to the testing. Is it a thyroid issue? Is it a stress cortisol issue? Can we be working on that? So energy, it could be also, if you're bleeding a lot, you could be having anemia. Might need some more iron, right? So it's always important to identify why you're tired. But I think starting with those nutrient dense foods is going to really help. Was there a second part of the question?
Yeah, she's specifically saying she bleeds really minimally, but her minimally really bad.
Interesting. Yeah. So, honestly, I hate to say it again, but that's testing for sure, because that could be so many things that you could even make it worse, or just get no results and just continue to feel like that.
Yeah.
That could be that you're creating, for example, not really enough estrogen, but you're also not getting it out of your body. I don't know. There could be a million reasons why that's happening, right? So you're having the PMS, or you're not ovulating, so you're not creating enough progesterone, so you're not having a healthy kind of flow and cycle.
Yeah, and I would say one of my favorite supplements for people, especially when it's with energy, is beef liver. So I like Vital Proteins beef liver tablets, and I am someone that just my body likes it. It loves it. I can't really not take them. And one of the reasons I like them is because they're kind of like nature's multivitamin. They are packed with B vitamins and selenium and all these things that we need and that are going to be supportive to life in general, but of course PMS as well. But then specifically, a lot of people will notice increased energy by taking beef liver. And we just got done talking about plant-based. And so sort of, in connection to that, animal organs are so incredibly nutrient dense. Like historically, we used to prioritize eating those over the muscle meat, and now we eat the muscle meat and think organs are gross. So you don't have to eat it. I use it in supplemental tablets, and it works really, really well. But that's just one thing I kind of want to throw in there. If you're looking to try some things and see if they work, obviously we always recommend testing. We always recommend working with a practitioner, ruling scary things out with your doctor, that sort of thing. But there's not going to be anything wrong with taking some beef liver and seeing how it makes you feel.
Yeah, I love that. And yes, of course, always talk to your doctor before you supplement and all of that. We always want to put that disclaimer out there because, we're not your individual practitioner. We don't know what else you're taking, for example. But I would say beef liver is a great one. I love that. And then I would say, either if you're not taking that, like a multi-mineral or multivitamin can be really helpful. And the other one that I just see across the board that can help with so much PMS issues, so many Oh gosh, so many issues with our period is magnesium. We are so deficient in magnesium, you guys. We're supposed to be like 1% magnesium as human beings, but we're deficient because we drink alcohol and coffee and we're stressed out, and it just completely gets out of our body every day.
Yeah.
So that would be a supplement that I would say would be really helpful. And you can also get it from Epsom salt baths. So there's a lot of ways you can get magnesium into your body, without supplementing. But I would say that's a pretty safe one as well to supplement with. And the other, what I'd love to say about anxiety, if you're not already taking an SSRI, and again, like, no, if you're taking an antidepressant or anything like that, there's absolutely no judgment. Sometimes that's absolutely what's necessary. And sometimes it's a amino acid deficiency, meaning that you're not getting enough protein, or you're not kind of creating enough of that when you absorb it. So Trudy Scott has a lot of information on this, but she's kind of the leader in it. And I would definitely recommend looking into that. Things like GABA and tryptophan and things like that can really support as well.
Awesome. Sophie, we have been talking for about an hour, so I feel like maybe we need a part 2.
Maybe we do.
What message would you like to leave with everyone today?
Feel into your body, ladies. Like, this is your one body. Commit to taking care of it. And if you're not sure what that means, reach out to one of us, reach out to the community. There's so many people that are going through this and they have your back. If you're having a symptom, it's not something you have to deal with. It's not something you have to medicate necessarily. There are a lot of options out there if that's the route you want to go. Just show up for yourself, love yourself deeply that way, and your body will also respond in kind.
Love it. Okay, where can people find you? Do you have a website, social media? How can people connect with you and learn more?
Yeah, so my website, my Facebook, and my Instagram is all She Talks Health. So She Talks Health. And also my radio show is She Talks Health on the voiceamerica.com channel. So I do a weekly radio show all about giving voice to women's issues. Specifically this, I'm actually talking to Dr. Beth Westy on Tuesday at 11 a.m. About how we can fuel ourselves with nutrients for our cycle. So tune into that. Last week is about infertility. So it's a good one. And I have lots of stuff on my website. I work with people one-on-one over 6 months to restore their hormones, get them back in line and feeling amazing and not having this PMS and painful periods and missing periods and all that stuff. And I'm also working on my Period Power group program, which is going to be a group program you can enroll in soon. So you can email me to sign up for the waitlist for that at Sophie at she-nyc.com. And then finally, I am about 4 days away from launching my 10-day digestive and hormone reboot. So you can sign up for that on the website as well.
Awesome. That's fantastic. Can you send me some of those links and we'll make sure that they're easy access with the podcast and with the video and everything like that?
Absolutely.
Thanks so much, Sophie. I hope this was helpful. I thought it was a really interesting and supportive conversation, specifically if women are struggling with this. So thanks so much for sharing your heart for this and your expertise. We appreciate you.
Yes, of course. Thanks for having me. Sending you so much love. Bye, guys.